are absolutely blessed today to be joined by the one and only Josh Alcorn. Josh, do you want to say a quick hi? And then we will cut you back off screen, do a little bit more. There he is.
Hello, friends. So glad to be here with you. Patrick, you get an amazing number of people on your webinars, brother. So glad to be here with you guys.
Josh, what is one thing making you happy this week?
Oh man, it's beautiful here in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. And I know Kathy was talking about foraging for mushrooms. Well, I got a lot of joy this week from the Mushroom Festival, which is in my hometown. Kennett Square is the mushroom capital of the world. So
Wow.
Kathy, if you want to come out, and I don't know if we are known for our wild mushrooms, they're sort of farmed here, but we had a lot of fun as a family at the Mushroom Festival this past
This,
weekend.
this is a great fact. All right, Josh, we'll kick you off video. We'll come back to you in a second. But so glad to have you here. Sorry to everyone who missed the Mushroom Festival, but please mark your calendars for next year. A couple quick housekeeping notes. This event is approved for 1.0 CFRE credits. We've added a question to the survey to certify your participation. At the end of the webinar, we will drop a survey in the chat. And you can fill it out, relatively short survey, but that will also give us a record that you were here. We don't send you a certificate or anything, but if you get audited, we will help you out and back you up. So that's how that works. Here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit from me about some research around direct mail. Then we have Josh Alcorn, who I'll talk more about in a moment, who is absolutely brilliant and one of the smartest people in terms of the construction and strategy of direct mail. So we're going to hear from him for about half an hour. We'll talk a little bit about both some sort of calendar advice, and then basically what is the optimal thing you can do for your smallest donors, for your mid-tier donors, and for your major donors. So you should leave here with a crystal clear plan of what to do for the rest of the year, not thanks to me, thanks to Josh and all the hard work that he's doing. One small note, by the way, some of you will ask about this later. We will send around the recording and the slides to you after the fact. So someone will ask, you can do me a favor and answer them in the chat when they do ask. All right, quick intros. My name is Patrick. This is what I look like with a much larger beard, alongside my wonderful co-founder, Jenny Shias-Spradling. I'm usually based in New York and Miami. Jenny is all the way out in Seattle. Right now, I am in a rental house all the way out here on the tip of Long Island. It comes with this map, which is very handy to have right behind the computer. And in Montauk, it is quiet and slow as everyone else has gone back to school and whatnot. So I got to walk the dog on the beach this morning, and we did see a whale only about 70, 80 feet away. It was really surprisingly close. We are lucky, Jenny and I are lucky to lead the Free Will team. $10 billion raised for charity to date. We're super excited about that. More than 1,500 nonprofit partners, including a whole lot of you. So just this is an expression of gratitude from all of us to you on the call who are partners. Thank you for being that. Over 4 centuries of combined fundraising experience, partly because we're really smart, partly because we're just getting older. But a lot of effort goes into each of these sessions, and obviously all the work that we do outside of this. Today we are unbelievably lucky, as I mentioned, to be joined by Josh Alcorn, a longtime friend, the co-producer of the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference, which I'll tell you a little bit about later, but it is almost sold out. So you might be lucky to get one of the last few tickets. Josh is sort of an astonishingly good fundraiser. And we'll sort of intro him more in a second, but we're so grateful to have Josh here. And just thank you, Josh, for being here. And thank you for all the hard work you put in preparing to share with everybody here. Other things we like to do is we're just grateful to have you here. We're grateful to have Josh. We're grateful to have you. We are going to send a copy of one of my favorite books. This is by Rob Biesenbach, if I'm saying that right, a book called Unleash the Power of Storytelling, and basically talks about some of the science and strategies around great storytelling. This will be used in your direct mail, in your emails, in your one-to-one conversation, in your non-work life, which is obviously very important. You know, we all talk about our career development here, but there's lots of great things, and being a great storyteller is an all-time skill to have. So we will send this to 20 people. The way you can get this is at the end of the session in that survey, give us your name and email address and home address, and so we can actually send it to you. Okay, so a couple of things. We asked you how your week is going. Generally fine, a little bit of a dip from last week's high, but things are going well across the board. Good to see it. A little bit more pessimism in terms of how we're hitting, how confident we are about hitting our goals. Still more confident than not, right? So that we start with a very high baseline, but we do see some decline here. We often see this pick back up after Labor Day. August can be a slow month for real-time giving, and we should be shooting out of the gate here. But this is not predetermined, right? And so we will talk through some of the strategies today that will make you more likely to hit your goals. The value of direct mail in 2024. So we're going to talk a little bit about the research here. We're going to talk a little bit about what you said your experience with direct mail is, and then we're going to hand the microphone over to Josh to get you some of the best insights that we can. So it is still true that direct mail is a serious strategy that works. On average, they have an ROI of 112%. 67% of people feel mail provides a more personal connection than the internet. 56% of donors think print marketing is the most trustworthy of all marketing channels. So people put the most weight in direct mail. 44% said they had visited a website after receiving postcards. 34% had searched online after visiting postcards. So you see this combination effect start to take root, which was not true 10 years ago. It proves trustworthiness to your recipients, but then they'll look you up and make sure that you're real with a digital presence. So you have both of these things working hand in hand. These are both important. Effectively employing both of these can make your nonprofit appear attractive to new and lapsed donors who are just going to do a little bit of research, right? If your direct mail points to a really important problem to solve, they're going to go do some further research and make sure that you are legitimate online, but that gives you a really big opportunity to get new folks in the door. So when we look at 2024, right, we have some up-to-the-minute research here, thanks to your participation. So again, we will just continue to heap gratitude on you. When we ask you, how would you rate your current knowledge of direct mail fundraising? 5% say, I basically have no idea. I'm a total novice. 5% say somewhat unfamiliar. 14% say, I'm in the middle. I'm not an expert. 60% of you say I'm somewhat knowledgeable, and only 18% say very knowledgeable. So we don't have a ton of experts on the call, but we do have some. So if that's you and you want to contribute at some point, just feel free to type your thoughts in the chat. On average, what percentage of your nonprofit's income comes from direct mail campaigns? Well, you see here, 35% of you say less than 10%. 25% say, 37% say between 11 and a quarter. 18% says 26 to 50, and 10% says more than half and up to 3/4. Nobody said that more than 3/4 of our income comes from direct mail campaigns. So good to know there. What do we use it for? Well, obviously, annual giving is the #1 reason. The second most common reason stated is planned giving, right? So annual giving followed by planned giving. Third most common is stewarding major donors. So we'll send them thoughtful notes. Stewardship of planned giving donors on the list as well. And then major giving, still prominent at 24%, but probably some space to grow there. Josh is going to actually walk you through a couple of tactics that you can use for major donors with direct mail. But it's not easy, right? And so we asked folks, what do you perceive as the most significant challenge in executing a successful direct mail campaign? People say things like, it's hard creating a fresh, compelling message for the annual appeal twice a year, every year, year after year, right? So that's very hard. Other challenges, writing the story and then getting all the data properly segmented for the printer, and then preparing all the emails and follow-up that go with the letter. We had a huge problem last year. The mail was dropped at the post office the first week of December and didn't hit many mailboxes until the last week of January. So that was a huge challenge. We asked you, how often do you send out direct mails? And so 12% of you send it every month, which is sort of wild. 35% send it quarterly, 29% send it twice a year, 14% send it annually, once a year, and then 10% say something else. So that's what you got there. And then we asked also, how often do you send direct mail for things that are not fundraising? And you see here actually similar numbers, right? So 29% quarterly is the most common, 17% annually, and then a lot of people type something in that was like, it depends on the year or the month, and so we'll take those folks out for the moment. When we ask you how much you're getting from direct mail, the average gift is about $50 to $100 for most, and then it goes up to a bit. 25% say it was $100 to $200. Only 7% said your average donation was more than $500. Now, there are some tips that we can talk about later to actually drive up your average donation, so you're getting more money with exactly the same number of mailings. that will be quite useful, I hope. And then we also asked, how often do we integrate direct mail campaigns with digital strategies, such as email or social or text? 55% of you said always. This is a really big deal. And this is a pretty big shift from a year ago, let alone 3 and 5 years ago. So you can see the growing maturation of the industry here in terms of multi-channel usage. 29% said sometimes, and only 5% said never. If we had done this 2 years ago, you might have half of people saying never. So very good. Most successful types of direct mail campaigns, this is hugely valuable. So 63% of you said story-driven appeals are the best. 9% say fact-based, event, membership, and other. But story-driven appeals have now taken the industry by storm. And this is the dominant way that most of us are fundraising, which is good because it tends to be the most effective. Some of you, especially larger organizations, are testing, meaning they'll send out different copies of a piece of mail and then send the most successful one to a much larger group. So 8% of you are doing this regularly, 30% of you are doing it occasionally, but 2/3 of you are doing it basically never. And that's okay if you're a smaller organization. So what we can do is basically use some of the learnings of the bigger organizations and just put them in practice the first time. So really, really good. And then when we asked you how you plan to incorporate direct mail into your end of year strategy, a couple things stood out, right? So someone said we plan to do the following. We're giving this permanent gift giving guide in October, which was a recommendation from Free Will. We're doing an annual report in November, and then a formal end of year letter and donation request in December. Others said we send an email letter out to donors and incorporate a digital campaign. This year, we're trying to QR code for response and versus including a remit envelope to help save on costs. Josh, we'd love your opinion on this later. Should we include an envelope? Do we do QR codes? Do we do both? What's the right move here? Others said we'll be sending 3 direct mail pieces this year, a giving summary showing individuals giving the last 3 years with an ask to increase, a longer story-based appeal, and then a holiday card that has an ask and a reply envelope inside. Someone else says we're planning on ditching the traditional mail house and customizing our letters to each donor, sending small amounts weekly rather than doing a large dump. All right, so we're going to pause here, and I'm going to introduce the amazing Josh Alcorn. Josh, first of all, Josh has the best hair in the business. So glad to have you here, Josh. A couple things about Josh. Josh has been fundraising since the 80s when he was running his fundraising campaigns as an elementary school student. Among other things, he was one of the leading folks in fundraising for the late, great Senator Harry Reid. So some of you know this. Harry Reid was the Senate Majority Leader, former boxer, if I recall correctly, from the great state of Nevada. And Harry was a legendary fundraiser. In a town where a lot of people can fundraise, Harry became the Senate Majority Leader because he was such a good fundraiser and was able to really help Democrats across the board. So regardless of your politics, there's lots of stuff to learn here. Josh later became one of the early folks at the Beau Biden Foundation for the Protection of Children, and has done a range of other things, and is now the co-executive director of the co-producer. So Josh, we will hand the mic to you, and please tell us everything we need to know about direct mail at end of year.
Awesome. Patrick, thank you. Phoebe, thank you for inviting me. To everyone here today, all 1,012 of you, thank you for taking some time out of your day to get a little bit better at this fundraising thing. I could do a whole webinar just on the questions and comments that came through and providing some color to the data that you guys submitted. A couple things jumped out at me. I'll get into my talk in just a second. Patrick, if you're in Montauk, make sure you go have dinner at Harvest at Fort Pond. They have the single greatest dessert in the entire world. It's like this deconstructed ice cream sandwich, buddy. It's amazing.
I will. I'm only coming back on video to tell you I did that on Saturday and ate that dessert, and it was delicious. So Josh, back to you.
It's the best place in the world. So then somebody in the comments said that it's very hard sending direct mail with twice a year with fresh messages. I hear you. That is tough. One of the hardest things about fundraising is being regular and consistent with your direct response, with your direct mail, I'm here to tell you that you can probably not worry about refreshing the message every time you send. There are tons of organizations that send the exact same year-end appeal every single year, and it continues to raise more money every year. So your donors aren't reading everything that you send them. Even if you're only sending them 2 things a year, you could probably send them more. But if you're only sending them 2 things, I wouldn't sweat too much coming up with a whole new idea for your fundraising campaign. And then somebody else talked about the frustrations and the difficulties with delivery of your mail. Folks, this is an ongoing problem and probably isn't going to get any better anytime soon. The only advice I have for you, well, 2 pieces of advice. You can't control it, so you can't control what you can't control. Let it go. 2, use first-class postage for your major donors. For the donors who you expect higher than average gifts, put a first-class stamp on them. Take them to the mailbox yourself. For everyone else, if you're using nonprofit mail, nonprofit stamps, or metered nonprofit mail, just get that to the post office as early as you can. I'll talk a little bit about the schedule in a minute. I know in my community in Kennett Square, I get all of the nonprofit mail delivered to my mailbox on one day. My local post office holds all of the nonprofit mail and sends it out on Thursdays. So that means your donors, if you're in a community like mine where this is happening, your donors are getting 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 appeals perhaps around year end, all on the same day, which means you need your envelope to stand out a little bit more. I won't talk about envelopes and that sort of stuff in my presentation, but happy to answer questions about that when we get to Q&A. So let me share my screen. I'm going to walk you guys through a couple of things today. Oops, let's get to the top here. Slide 1. How to level up your direct mail for year end. Folks, I've been doing nonprofit fundraising now for about 10 years. As Patrick said before that, I was doing political fundraising. It is a much different game, nonprofit fundraising from political fundraising. And one of the biggest reasons it's different is we have this thing called year end where donors are incredibly generous. For many of us, our fiscal year is ending on December 31st. And so it's this perfect confluence of donor generosity being at an all-time high, us needing to hit our budgets, and then other things like Giving Tuesday and other reasons to give being out there, Thanksgiving, other holidays like that are ratcheting up the generosity of our donors at the same time that we need to be hitting our budget numbers. So year end is a great thing, and donors are super generous. And I'm going to talk to you today about how to get your direct mail strategy sort of fine-tuned for year end. I'm going to talk about 4 things really. I'm going to give you an example schedule for when you should be sending your direct mail at year end. If you've been around the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference or Work Less, Raise More, you've probably seen this schedule already. But for those of you who are new to those entities, this will be hopefully helpful to you. Give you a tip for raising more money through direct mail from your major donors, one for your mid-level donors, and a tip for your mass donors. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A. All right, let's dive into the calendar. So my recommendation this year is that you're sending 3 fundraising appeals. That's going to sound crazy to some folks, but I'll talk about what that third one is, so it's not as heavy of a lift. And that you're having a related email appeal for each of those print appeals, and then you have a very robust year-end fundraising, year-end email campaign. So appeal 1, I suggest that you take that to your mail, to your post office on November 27th so that it arrives around November 30th, and that you follow that up with an email. I call it a chaser email, but it's basically the exact same appeal that exact same copy from your print appeal put into your email client and sent to everybody on your email list. Appeal 2 should be basically the same appeal that you sent your first one, but just a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit more urgent. And I suggest you take that to the mailbox, to the post office rather, around December 9th, so that it gets into your donors' mailboxes around December 12th. This is assuming that most of you are mailing people in your community or in your sort of geographic area, and that you're using first-class postage. If you're going to be using nonprofit mail or your organization with national reach, where you'll be mailing from New York to donors in California, you want to push that mail date out a little bit, maybe as much as a week. But the goal is that your first appeal is arriving on Black Friday or the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and that your second appeal is arriving about 2 weeks after that. Then your third appeal, I'll talk very specifically about what this appeal should be in my third tip, or what it should look like in my third tip. But you want to mail this around December 20th, again, so that it lands in mailboxes sort of the day after Christmas, so December 26th. If it gets there on Christmas Eve, that's no big deal. And you'll see why once we get to, once I talk about that, what that appeal looks like. Next, you should be sending a robust email campaign to your donors on the last couple of days of the year, the 29th, 30th. Oh, there's a typo, 30th, 31st. I suggest one email on the 29th, one email on the 30th, and 3 emails on December 31st. Again, sorry for that typo. Here's why. Your donors are busy throughout the year. They're especially busy at year end. And so the ones who are maybe missing your mail or forgetting about it or opening it, putting it on the counter and forgetting about it, are more likely to see perhaps your emails. And so the frequency and the volume of emails you're sending them matters a lot. The more you talk to your donors about the thing that you're asking them to do at year end, make a gift to support whatever it is your organization does, they're going to pay more attention to it the more often they hear it. So volume wins at year end. Again, one email on the 29th, one on the 30th, 3, maybe 4 or 5. If you have the capacity to do more, please do more. No one has ever raised, I mean, I guess some folks have, but you have to be sending a lot of emails at the end of the year to sort of raise less money than you did last year. So don't be afraid to lean into your digital fundraising, especially in those last couple of days of the year. Everyone else is. So that's my suggested year-end fundraising calendar. Happy to answer questions about that when we get to the end. All right, get bigger gifts from your major donors. Here's my tip, folks. It's about challenge funds. You should have a match in all of your year-end fundraising if you're able to. Matching funds, challenge funds, we'll talk a little bit about the difference between the two of those. But if you can secure matching funds from your major donors, it does 2 things. This is actually kind of like 2 tips in one. You're going to get bigger gifts from your major donors because they'll want to participate in your matching program so that their donation is matched. And you'll get more money from your mass donors, from the folks who are responding to the appeals that you send them that include a match. Here's the sort of the funky math that happens. You would think that when a donor puts up matching funds, they put up $5,000 in matching funds, you raise $5,000 from your mass donors with those matching funds. It's actually not a one-to-one relationship because through testing, we've seen and we've learned that there's actually this extra 20% of revenue that sort of magically appears when there's matches. That's because more donors give, and more donors give more money when there's a match involved in the appeal they're responding to. So it's $1.20 for every dollar that your major donor, you receive $1.20 in gifts from your donors for every $1 that a major donor puts up in matching funds. It's like the angel share, right? So it's just an incredible amount of generosity is activated when you have matching funds available. So I want all of you to go out to some major donors and get matching funds. If you have one major donor that you can ask for $15,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, great. If you're an organization that doesn't have major donors with that capacity, I have up here on the screen some language that you can use to go to a handful of major donors or even a handful of mid-level donors who want to play a bigger role in your organization and ask them to contribute to what we call a year-end challenge fund. This is, it's sort of an accounting thing. You just create this fund and you raise money into it from major donors, or again, as I said, from these mid-level donors, and encourage them to, and this money then is used as leverage as the matching funds, or the challenge funds rather, for your year-end fundraising. I have it up on the screen. I'm not going to read it, but you can feel free to screenshot it and you'll get the copy of the slides a little bit later today. But this is exactly what I would say to a major donor. We've created this year-end challenge fund. We'd love for you to make a gift, your year-end gift into this fund. We'll use it to match gifts in our year-end fundraising appeals and e-appeals. And for every dollar you give, we'll raise, we expect, about $1.20. Donors love this. So much so that a major donor who might normally give you $5,000, you can feel confident asking them for $7,500 or $10,000 if you're asking them for matching funds. Then on the right side of the screen, I have what you should say in your fundraising when you're including, when you have matching funds for your year-end appeals. Say something like you want to at least mention the match 5 times in each appeal, maybe 6 times. And you want to say things like your gift will be doubled up to, and the amount of money you've raised into your year-end challenge fund. You want to say things like your gift, which will be doubled, will do whatever the thing it is that your organization does and that you're asking donors to do with their gift. You want to say things like, please make your gift, which will be doubled by December 31st. The more often you are mentioning that their donor's gift will be doubled, will be matched in your fundraising, the more likely it is that donors are going to notice it and make a gift. Okay, very quick riff on the difference between challenge funds and matching funds. If a question hasn't come in already about that, I'm sure it will. It is an important difference, and it's important for us to know it, but not communicate it to our donors. Let me say it a little differently. It's important that we understand the difference, but our donors don't care about the difference, and so we shouldn't worry about explaining it to them. Matching funds are this. A donor puts up $10,000 in matching funds. You as a fundraiser have to go out and raise $10,000 to get that $10,000. If you raise $9,000, the donor who put up the matching funds is only on the hook to give you $9,000. They're going to match the money you raise dollar for dollar up to $10,000. Now, honestly, most of our organizations, the donors are gonna, if you only raise $9,000 and they've pledged $10,000 in matching funds, most donors will write you the full $10,000. Matching funds are great because in your fundraising, you can say things like, I don't want to miss out on $1 of matching funds. That's why it's incredibly important that you make a gift today to help us raise $10,000 to unlock all of these matching funds. A little more urgency in that case. Challenge funds are a little bit different. A donor, as we're doing in this case with the year-end challenge fund, donors put the money in and that's yours. If you have $10,000 in challenge funds and you raise $5,000, great, you're going to get the 5 from your mass donors and you'll still get the $10,000 from your year-end challenge fund donors. It's not a one-to-one comparison. That's how I suggest most of you raise for your challenge fund, is with challenge fund dollars as opposed to matching fund dollars. Again, your donors aren't going to know the difference. And as long as you're saying things like your gift will be doubled and not saying things like your gift will be matched, you're safe to fundraise whether you have challenge funds or matching funds. So I hope that makes sense. It is an important distinction for accounting purposes. It is an important distinction for your major donors and how you're communicating with them, but your mass donors won't necessarily care. Okay, next tip. How to get bigger gifts from your mid-level donors. Here's the 30,000-foot view, folks. Mid-level donors are, let me take a step back before I get to the 30,000-foot view. Your mid-level donors are probably donors who are making gifts between, depending on your organization size, $500 and $1,000. These are the folks who aren't your major donors who you have relationships with, who you're communicating with more regularly. They're not making sort of the transformational gifts that major donors make, but they could. And they're also sort of your major donors in waiting, so to speak. These are donors with capacity to give you major gifts who might not yet be making major gifts to your organization because you don't have the relationship with them yet. Maybe they're sort of just getting to know you. And they're probably, and this is important, major donors to other nonprofits. And so they know what it's like to be seen as and to be treated as major donors. And so my tip for you this year-end season is to treat as many of those mid-level donors special by personalizing and customizing your direct mail so that they have as close to a major donor experience as you can provide using just your direct mail. And then in the spring and over the summer, you can sort of engage with these donors in a different way to sort of see if they're ready to rise up and make a major gift. But let's use this year-end season to sort of treat them as close to major donors as we can. Here's what I suggest you do. 3 things. When you send them your year-end appeals, at least the first 2, if you're going to send all 3, include a cover letter with your appeal. This is just a simple 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It's a letter from your executive director or your CEO directly to the donor. It's personalized with their name. It says something very simple. I have an example that I'll show you on the next slide. But it just says something very simple. Hey, I wanted you to see this letter. You've been a supporter for so long. Please take a look at the enclosed appeal and make a special year-end gift. It's hand signed, perhaps it's hand PS'd, but it makes the donor feel like your executive director, your CEO, or you took the time to create a special letter just for them. 2, include a full page reply device. Again, I'll show an example of that on the next page. For those of you who are using 1/3 of a page reply cards that are either attached to your appeal or maybe in the envelope detached, that's great. You should always be sending some reply device to your donors at year end so that they can fill out a form and send you back in an envelope the form and a check, or their credit card number and a check, although not many folks are writing their credit card numbers on paper these days. But a full page reply device is just bigger. It feels more important. It has more white space. It's easier to read. It's easier to fill out the donor information. It just looks a lot different, and it feels like you're taking a little bit more time to communicate with your donors and making it a little bit easier for them to send in a gift. Again, I'll show you an example of that on the next slide. Third piece to getting a bigger gift from your mid-level donor is send that appeal in a larger envelope. Maybe you're doing a 9x12 envelope. Should have pulled one out from my little stash down in my drawer here, but it's just a regular 9x12 sort of manila envelope. It's brown. It doesn't have your logo on it or anything. You'll handwrite the donor's address. You'll put a first class stamp plus probably like a 2-cent stamp. I think you might need to add to that an envelope that size, and put the cover letter, appeal letter, reply device, paper clip together in that envelope and send it off to your mid-level donors. If you're able to do this for 10, 20, 30, depending on your capacity, 50 donors who aren't major donors, who are making gifts sort of for your organization, maybe between $500 and $1,000, you'll see higher than average response rate from those donors. You'll hopefully see higher than average gift size from those donors because you're taking the time to treat them as close to major donors as you possibly could. So I'm going to throw up on the screen examples of, on the left, a cover letter, and on the right, a full page reply device. Happy to share these documents as individual Word documents for you to modify for your organization. Just want to call out on the left side in the cover letter, lots of you language. You're one of the organization's closest friends. You're someone I turn to when help is urgently needed. You can see my cursor mark after look there where I did the screenshot. You've been so generous for so long, which is why I hope I can count on you for a special year-end gift. We're not talking about the organization here, folks. If you've seen my webinars with Patrick and the Free Will crew before, you know that the best direct response fundraising is donor-focused and not organization-focused. On the right-hand side, the reply device, you can see lots of white space there, lots of opportunities for donors to be able to read clearly. At the top of the reply device, I will help a mom-to-be to have a healthy pregnancy. That's the outcome that the donor's gift will make. I, the donor, will make a gift to make sure that the mom has a healthy pregnancy. We're calling out the donor specifically in a special reply form prepared for. We're lasering in or mail merging in the donor's name. In the gray box, we have, this is the gift string. This is where we're asking our donor to make a gift, a specific amount. For your mid-level donors and for your major donors, be careful with what you're putting in this box. I think it's a little uncouth sometimes to ask a donor on a reply card to make a gift of $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. So I might just include, depending on the capacity of the donor, a what's called an open ask, a surprise us, or my best gift. In case folks are asking questions in the chat about this, I will say ask one is the donor's last gift. In this case, will be doubled. We have a match here to 2 times ask one. The second ask is would be sort of 1.5 times their last gift, and ask 3 would be 2 times their last gift. So happy to talk a little bit more about gift strings if that is of interest to folks. What is not on this form is a QR code. I can see folks putting a QR code on this form if they want. There's certainly enough space, but still I think most folks are going to, depending on your organization, most folks are still going to mail this full page reply device back with a check. If you're an organization whose donor base skews a little bit younger, if you're a social justice organization or environmental organization, perhaps, you might have younger donors who are more comfortable making online gifts, include a QR code. I don't see a reason not to include a QR code unless it makes everything smaller. If you're sending a 1/3 page reply device that's attached to the bottom of your appeal, or it's even if it's a separate piece in your direct mail pack, I would be very careful using a QR code if it means you have to take something else off the appeal. I'm sorry, off the reply device. Okay, happy to talk a lot more about QR codes when we get to Q&A, which should be in just a couple minutes. Now let's talk about getting bigger gifts from your mass donors, folks. This is my suggestion that you send a third appeal this year. This is an appeal that would land in your donors' mailboxes just after Christmas. If you can time it to get there on Boxing Day, December 26th, my mom's birthday, that's great. If it gets there the day before Christmas, if it gets there a couple days before New Year's, that's fine as well. But this third appeal is as close to a bill as you would ever send a donor. It is super urgent. It's a postcard, perhaps even. It doesn't include a reply device. It doesn't include an envelope. It can, but it doesn't have to. This is the only time I would ever say send your donors a piece of fundraising where you're not including an envelope to send a gift back. So use a QR code or a super memorable URL. I wouldn't have your URL be something like yourorganization.org/year-end/third appeal/QR code, right? Don't make it too long. It should be super short. yourorganization.org/urgent/year-end/postcard, something like that. If you're able to, I'm going to give you an example of one of these postcards that worked super well for an organization run by a friend of mine. If you're able to, include a thermometer on the postcard or in the appeal, that shows you're 2/3 of the way to your goal or 90% of the way to your goal. Include a progress bar, another version of a thermometer. Don't be afraid to send this third appeal to donors who made a gift on Giving Tuesday or who made a gift in early December. They have probably forgotten about that gift. Most of your mass donors have probably forgotten about that gift. And even if they remember it, the best indicator of future giving is the recency with which a donor made their last gift. So if somebody made a gift 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, they're a lot more likely to make a gift to you today than someone who made a gift 18 months ago. So send it to folks who make gifts early in your year-end fundraising campaign. And then my fifth point is be creative. You can have a lot of fun with this third appeal, as you'll see in the example I'm about to share. So if you feel constrained or buttoned up or closed in, or you have to send a fundraising appeal, your first 2 year-end fundraising appeals, in the way that it's always been done before, you can be creative. I'm giving you permission to be very creative with how you present this third appeal. So let's take a look at an example. This is an organization based in Indiana, Shelbyville, Indiana. It's a cat rescue called Shelby Cats, and it's a postcard. And on the front, notice at the top in big letters, critical $4,898 year-end need. Your gift will be doubled. And it's got the deadline. It's got 2 cats who look like they could probably use some help. And in as bright a red as you could have, you have a reminder sticker with black letters. Reminder. And then on the other side of the postcard, it says, your donation today will rescue an orphan kitty from the harsh Indiana winter. That is a very clear need, and you're very clearly telling the donor what their gift will do. Please give securely online at shelbycats.com or scan the QR code. And then Carrie Ann, my friend who created this, has 1, 2, 3. Here is exactly what to do, right? Because one of the things we know about QR codes is younger folks are super comfortable with it, but the older your donor base is, the less likely they are to be comfortable using QR codes. We're comfortable, most of us, using QR codes because we are, but not all of our donors are. So Carrie Ann, I think, does a great job of making it very clear and very simple for folks to scan the QR code. And that's it. That's it. We got the deadline, super clear. The urgency, your donation will rescue an orphan kitty from the harsh Indiana winter. Makes me want to give too. Okay, that's the third appeal. Now it's Q&A time. You can join me in New Mexico for some beautiful weather, hopefully November 11th, 12th, and 13th at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. I checked this morning. We have, at least as of this morning, we had 59 tickets remaining for the conference. So go to the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. com, learn about the conference, maybe get one of those last couple tickets. If you need help with your year-end appeal, check out workclassraisemore.com. My colleague Stephen Screen and I and my friend Chris Davenport run Work Class Raise More. You can get some video training, join our membership community, and create your year-end fundraising right there. I can review your appeals. We have a couple other community things that go on there too, but take a look at those things. And I'm excited to ask questions. I'm sure that of the 1,000 people who were on this webinar, at least a few of them have questions.
Josh, we have maybe more questions than we've ever seen. And people are super excited, super grateful.
Fire
I'm
away.
going to very quickly do some wrap up, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time on questions. So, all right. So very quickly, couple things to note. My wonderful colleague, Phoebe, is going to drop a survey in the chat. Please take a moment to click it, fill it out. We will also do our best to get you the Word docs that Josh was talking about as the examples. This stuff is obviously invaluable, and Josh, thank you so much for sharing that. The book that we talked about, Unleash the Power of Storytelling, again, make your direct mail better, make your fundraising better, make the rest of your life that doesn't include work better. Please drop a note in the survey if you're interested, and let us know where to send that book. We're going to send it to 20 folks. Otherwise, we would bankrupt ourselves sending you books. Send it to 20 folks as a big thank you. I have two really, really exciting events that I would love for you to come to if you are interested, and you can RSVP in the survey as well. So the first is tomorrow. No, it's not. I'm sorry. It is not tomorrow. It is Thursday, September 12th at noon Eastern. Thursday, not tomorrow. Thursday at noon Eastern. And this session is very special. It's with Mark Vigliotti. Mark is the Plan Giving Executive Director at CARE. Many of you know CARE. CARE does incredible life-saving work all around the world. And Mark is one of the absolute smartest people in plan giving. So if you work on plan giving, or you hope to work on plan giving at some point, come here, come talk to Mark. We're going to talk about CARE's plan giving program. We're going to talk about how they use free will. So you'll learn more about some of the free will stuff, particularly what we call featureships. But you'll hear from Mark, and he's just brilliant. If you are someone who's trying to get smarter about plan giving and looking for what smart strategic things other organizations do, come talk to Mark. He is one of the best. So join that. And then also in the survey. And then in 2 weeks from today, minus 1 hour, exactly 2 weeks, we are doing another session on what we call the most important research on donor psychology. And so we are diving into a whole bunch of wonky academic research on donor psychology. So you don't have to. We're breaking down what are the key findings that researchers have come across over the last few years. What are the most recent ones, and how do you actually put those into play in year-end fundraising and other things, right? So we're going to do a lot of deep dive on some of this research, and it should be really fun because a lot of us are also donors. So we'll learn more about ourselves as we learn about our donors. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing screen. Welcome Josh back. If you are not already, please fill out the survey in the chat, which I think is getting dropped in, if not already. And a couple questions. So Josh, we got a lot of people are super interested. First, we're going to go with one specific question, which I thought was a really interesting challenge. And that is, I'm trying to find it, but we had a question about tuition. And so I'm new to, the question is, I'm new to our organization, which is a private school, right? So private school is obviously tuition plus raising a lot of money from parents and other folks. The school sends out tuition increase letters on December 1st, and they will not move it. How do we navigate fundraising around the fact that on December 1st, they're saying, hey, thanks for the tuition for little Annie. Last year it was 20K, now it's 22.
That is such a great question. So I'm on the board of my grade school. I went to a private Catholic grade school in Wilmington, Delaware called St. Edmunds. Go Lancers. And we send our tuition updates in like March. So I feel for you. That is tough. Here's what I would do. I would, segmentation is your friend here. I would do my best to segment out current parents from the rest of my donors and be mailing the rest of my donors so that they get their year-end appeal on November 30th. And then I would think about mailing just maybe one appeal to those parents. Maybe it's a more outcome focused appeal. Maybe not, since you're asking them to raise tuition. Maybe it's just more scholarship based, or I have to think a little bit more about that. But my gut reaction is segmentation is your friend here, and try not to be asking those donors, at least in that week or so around the time that tuition increases are noted.
Yeah,
That's
great.
obviously true.
There's a bunch of questions actually about return address envelopes.
Okay. Yes.
Are those included? Are those stamped on top of the reply forms?
Yep. So here's a quick little riff on reply devices and reply envelopes. Number one, anytime you send your donors a piece of mail where you're asking them to make a gift, either directly because it's a fundraising appeal or indirectly because you're reporting back to donors and you're sharing a story of need, you should send your donors some sort of form that they can send back to you and an envelope that they can send that back in. The sort of industry standard, again, is this third of a page reply device or a full page reply device like I showed, and a number 9 return envelope that's self-addressed to your organization. Number 10, I think, the smaller one. It does not have to be stamped.
Okay.
For some of your major donors, if you're willing to do it, you can stamp it. You're going to lose some money because not everybody's going to send it back, but it's only 60 cents. At scale, when you're sending out tens of thousands of these, stamping does make a difference because more donors don't have to look. I mean, think about it. You don't have to look around and find a stamp. You can just put it right back there. If you're not including a stamp, I would have your printer or whoever's designing your outer or your reply envelope put a little box where the stamp goes, and in that box, write your stamp is an additional gift. Not handwrite, but have that sort of in the stamp box, just to remind folks.
Super smart. Other interesting questions. Some folks said, I mean, it's sort of interesting. One thing I took away really is this idea of like your next 50 to 100 mid-level donors.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you send that package, I mean, I'm guessing that maybe those packages cost in total $2 each.
Yeah.
Something like that. So you're spending $100, $150 to try to move this huge group or this sort of relatively small but really powerful group forward. I thought that was really interesting. A couple folks said, okay, I'm a little bit smaller than some of the other organizations on this call. I hear the 3. If you had to do only 2 or you had to only do 1, how would you think about that?
Yep. So here, I should have probably said this in my presentation. Your first appeal will raise the vast majority of your year-end fundraising, right? So the first appeal is, if you do none, do 1. If you do 1, your second appeal, you should send it. You'll raise about 30% of the amount that your first appeal raised. So do the math. If your first appeal raised 10 grand, your second appeal is going to raise, if you're at a small organization, your second appeal is probably going to raise about 3 grand. Is that $3,000 worth the time and energy and cost to print and to mail? Or is that time better spent getting on the phone with major donors who haven't yet made a major gift? So you have to do that calculus for yourself, that calculation for yourself. But again, about 30%. Your third appeal, it's going to be easier to produce. It's going to be cheaper to produce because in this case, it's a postcard. It could be more fun, and don't forget the fun factor here. Fundraising should be fun. It's the first 3 letters of fundraising, so it should be fun. That's a fun one to work on, but it's not going to raise as much as your second appeal because you're not providing people a way to send you back a check because it's just a postcard with a QR code. That being said, because it's fun, because it's engaging, this is still kind of a new idea that we're putting out there in the world. So I don't have a ton of data to say how much it's going to raise. 20% less, 10% less, whatever. But it will definitely raise less than your first 2 appeals, but it's also pretty cheap. So I would absolutely do 1 at the end of November, beginning of December. And if you're able to do 2, I would do the second print appeal in the second week of December.
That's great. A couple questions about monthly donors. And actually, let me just pause because there's some other questions coming in about every time we still include the people who gave to the first appeal. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
If you're able to pull people the only time I would worry about suppressing recent donors is in the emails you send on December 29th, 30th, and 31st. If you're able to suppress from your universe the people who get the email on the 30th, suppress the people who made a gift on the 29th, great. If you're able to suppress the people from the email on the 31st who gave on the 29th and 30th, great. If not, no worries. But
Right.
it's just, it is not that big of a deal.
Makes sense. Quick thing on monthly donors. I assume we include monthly donors. Do you ever ask people to become monthly donors in your in these year-end appeals?
Yes, I do not. I don't suggest that you do. I suggest you're out there recruiting new monthly donors in January or at the end of August, sort of back to school time. I would not focus on recruiting monthly donors at the end of the year because you want larger gifts, not more consistent gifts. So monthly gifts are going to be on average a little bit smaller than your year-end average gift. So I would be focusing on getting the biggest gift you can from each donors rather than asking them to think about making an ongoing commitment. I would absolutely include your existing monthly donors in your year-end fundraising campaign. If you're the kind of organization that sends 4, 5, 6 appeals, 7 appeals a year, you're probably picking out 2 of your best performing appeals and including your monthly donors in those direct mail appeals. One of those should be year end, and then the other one should be whatever fundraising appeal works best for your organization. Maybe it's back to school, maybe it's a Thanksgiving appeal, maybe it's a summer camp or spring appeal, whatever it is for your organization. But you should absolutely be including them at year end. If you're able to, if you have the capacity to segment those donors out a little bit and have a slightly different first paragraph or second paragraph in your appeal that says something like, as one of our monthly donors, I'm hoping you'll consider making a 13th gift this year. So you're personalizing it and customizing it by acknowledging the fact that they're monthlies and asking them to go a little bit deeper and make a 13th gift. That sort of 13th gift is one of the reasons we love recruiting monthly donors in January, because then it literally is their 13th gift.
Yeah, I love that. All right, we're almost out of time. There are a couple questions around things like donor advised funds and stock giving and QCDs. We would just strongly recommend you include this, especially to your major donors and these mid-majors that we're trying to escalate. One of the things that we've seen in our research, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in 2 weeks, is that one of the fastest ways to get people to give more is to actually change the way they give. So if Josh and his wife have been giving $1,000 to the private school every year, and we start talking to them about stock giving, well, that might be the avenue to a $9,000 gift, or down the road a $90,000 gift. We're not going to attribute more wealth to Josh than he has, but down the road, you could see this over time becoming that. And so we'll talk more about that in different sessions, but that's something to keep in mind, especially as you think about how do we treat these mid-majors and these majors. A lot of people say, buildings only get built with stock gifts because gifts tend to be just the largest. All right, we are out of time. We have so much more to talk about, so we'll get Josh back here soon enough. Maybe, as you map out your 2025 strategy, which will be here before we know it. Before that, we're going to land the plane on end of year. We're going to have a great period. If you haven't already, please just click the survey and you can fill it out after the call ends. Josh Alcorn, thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick.
For being here.